Please rise for the invocations. Remain rising for the Pledge of Allegiance.
God, our divine spirit, we ask you to guide us this evening and guide our council and all the residents and the city workers for the highest good of our city. We ask that their decisions that they will be making tonight will carry through for every resident's highest good. And we ask you to please bless our city and our country and our planet. We thank thee. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Ms. Hanville. Here.
Mayor Dale Massad.
Here.
Vice Mayor Terrence Rowe.
Here.
Councilwoman Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Councilman William Dittmer.
Here.
Councilman Richard Bloom.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager Vincent Lupo.
Here.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Comments from the general public. I have. Leonard Lord, we've missed you.
Well, I'll tell you, we've been vacationing. Got to go up to Virginia with my son for a while on the Shenandoah River and up in North Carolina. So we're gone about 5 weeks. We've been waiting years for that.
All right.
So
Well, you got added to the ordinances for minimal housing. You got to help anybody that does it can't do it with your group. So go forward. I lied.
Yeah, I do want to remind everybody, and I know there's a lot of needs now. Our backpack giveaway will be the last Saturday of this month, which will be July 28th, and it'll be pre-registration. I apologize, I don't have flyers tonight. The secretary didn't get them for tonight. But we will be having the barbecue, feeding the families, and also resourcing for needs. We got resources for some clothes and things. So if you keep that in mind, and Chief, I hope the fire truck can be there. What a great time, and the police, and just be a good thing, and come have a good barbecue meal. So that's Saturday, August 28th. Registration will start at 9. We'll be pre-registered, but that's when they come sign up. And then we'll have giveaways at 10, 11, and 12. So if you get the word out to families that we really want to help them get back to school, connect with them, okay? Another thing for a few minutes is, yes? No, July. Last Saturday of July. July 28th. I'm sorry, July 28th. It's about on top of us. We'll be stuffing them the 25th and getting them ready, so we'll be giving out a lot in the area. Just a word of encouragement that's helped me. Sometimes it's hard working for people, with people, because they don't see it the way you see it. You know what I mean? And I remember sitting in a red light, and my wife just didn't understand how smart I was and what I was saying. She was in total disagreement. And I knew I was right, and she knew she was right. And so I do hear the Lord, and the Lord said, my son, you need to memorize James 3. Well, James 3 says this. It says, where there's envy and strife, there's confusion and every evil work. It says this wisdom don't come from above, but it's worldly, it's devilish, and it's fleshly. And then it says the wisdom from above is first pure. In other words, it's out of a pure heart for everybody. The wisdom from above is pure, then it's peaceable, then gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, and it's sown in peace of those that make peace. So the Lord had me memorize that, so whenever I begin to talk to my wife, then I could be able to use wisdom from above. So I remember sharing it with one of our commissioners. So just want to encourage y'all that we see things differently, and I know we're going through a time in the city now, but when we give it to God, He takes all of this and blends it together and work it out good, okay? So Lord bless you. Thank you for what you do, and may the peace of Christ rule in Port Richey, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Lord bless you. Remember the backpack giveaway, and if you want to help, every cent goes to backpacks. It really does. It helps us. We're paying for everything from the church by the grace of God, but what you can give, it doesn't go for food or any of that. We take care of that. Every cent you give will go to a stuffed backpack. Thank you.
Okay. Thomas Brown.
Thomas Brown, 7436 Candlelight Court. Please notice in Pasco County Plat Book 18 on page 60, that all easements on all lots in the Candlelight subdivision start at the property line and run in onto the property for 5 feet. Notice in the color aerial photo that I provided each of you that the 4-foot tall and the 6-foot tall fence go beyond the property line on lot 13 at 7447 Candlelight Court. This, of course, means that 5 feet of each fence is on a recorded easement. City ordinance mandates that any resident that places a fence on any recorded easement must provide the city with 4 no objection to dig letters from each of the 4 utilities. The resident at 7447 Candlelight Court did not produce the 4 letters with the permit for either fence. There are only 2 remedies to this code violation. Number 1, end the fences heading towards the lake at the property line and produce the required 4 no objection to dig letters, or end the fences heading towards the lake 5 feet before the property line, whereas they will not be on the recorded easement and the city ordinance will not be violated. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lee.
Lane Lee, 5713 Berlin. I'd like to just commend the city on the 4th of July fireworks display. I thought it was tremendous. I think all the departments worked together and put on a very, very successful show. And I think Jocelyn Martinez should be given a big pat on the back for all the work she did on it. Thank you.
Sir, we're going to do better next year, too. Okay, we are. Anyone else in the public want to speak? Bring it to council.
Me?
Oh, you're up next.
Yes, sir.
Dan.
Mayor and council, in keeping what Mr. Lee just spoke to, the city for the first time sponsored and ran the 4th, in this instance, 7th of July festival. I would like to thank all of the staff involved, Ms. Martinez, Chief DeCanio, Mr. Hughes, all of our firemen, all of our police department, all of our public works individuals. Staff did an outstanding job. I believe we've had absolutely no incidents whatsoever that occurred. And to my knowledge, everyone was quite pleased with the event. And we will be sponsoring it again next year with council's permission. But we will at that time try to expand the event. We'll be asking for citizen input prior to the event, and we'll be looking for sponsors to aid us in the event to make it a larger and more attractive event for the entire community and the guests who come to this community. And again, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all of the city employees and the citizens themselves for coming to the event and having a great time there. We most recently had a inspection by FEMA. FEMA came through our community on a inspection tour. It was long overdue. And that inspection tour, the building department took the individuals through our community. They looked at the various activities that was occurring in this community. And it was important because they're the ones who helped and make the changes to our flood insurance program, which affects all of those people who have flood insurance. We have had indications now that endeavor by our building staff and that tour and inspection will bear positive fruit for our community. There is a very good possibility that some sections will be removed from a VE zone, a higher flood insurance zone, to a lesser zone. That's not in stone yet, but that is the indication so far. When it occurs and the new maps come out, will be more than, it'll be a very beneficial event for those people being removed from that higher category to lower category. Their insurance rates will go down. We'll publish the maps and we'll ensure that everyone is aware of what has occurred. That's all I have. One other issue. You just went through a workshop with the minimum housing standards. If you will recall, and I began to speak to it during that workshop, Council gave us specific directions for a grant program. And that grant program will envision $50,000 in $1,000 grants, with half of those grants going above a certain income level and half of those, the grants going to individuals below that income level. We are in the process of finishing up all of the application forms that will be necessary and the backup documentation that will be required in order to ensure that the people who are below an income level are indeed qualified for that special grant. And that is in process now, and will be coming back to Council very shortly for Council's final approval. And that's all I have.
I'll bring it to council.
I'll join your remarks. I just want to congratulate staff. That fireworks show
Ooh, baby.
was phenomenal. It was great to see people enjoying the park. Kids were running around having a great time. I sent an email to the city staff thanking them. The fire and police department did super jobs, and the fire department even had the kids trying on helmets and jackets, and it was funny watching these little children put on his hat and fall over backwards because of the weight. But they had a time of their lives, and it was a great event. And thank you all for everything you did to make that possible.
Okay. I got a lot of stuff. I always have something to say, but I'll make it quick. I'm gonna challenge Mr. Matthew to find a way to put Dr. Bloom and my salaries, which we're trying to donate to low-income citizens.
That's a homework. Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
Not to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor. Both the mayor and Dr. Bloom have expressed a willingness to give their salaries, I presume for a year or whatever, for low-income housing. Normally, if it was used, you were giving X amount of dollars, like Johnny Cash did at one time, we could set up a fund, but you're not giving money, you're giving a promise to give money in the future,
Right.
okay, which is different. Money's not here yet. My suggestion is that budget season will be here in the next 30 days or so, right, Mr. Lupo?
Yes.
45 days, you're gonna set aside a certain amount of money for that. You know, make that statement then and have the council increase it for the year by 4,000 or whatever you get paid, something like that. And
Okay,
I think
but-
that would be more than reasonable to increase that amount. You understand? I mean, we can't, you're not funding it, you're giving a promise to fund something over the course of time. You understand what I mean? So if council wants to budget for that, or, you know, put in $54,000 into that, you know, that'll be up to council.
But how do we obviate when I gave Chris the excellence award?
You're gonna have to get the money and pay the tax, sir. I can't get out of that.
No, I'm saying you were worried about there being a,
You got, you'll get the money, you can give it back.
no, do you remember when
I understand that. Yeah, donating it to the city is different than donating it to a certain person.
But we kind of wanted to donate it to people who couldn't meet these residential standards and needed the money for.
Well, that would be up to the council if they wanted to set aside a certain amount of money on your promise to do that. Do you understand what I mean? That's up to this council when they take their risk. It's a relatively modest amount of money. That'd be up to this
Right.
council. You haven't given it yet. In other words, I'm sure both of you will do that.
We will.
You're not writing a check. You understand what I mean?
Okay.
So,
No, would the better way to be to put it in a joint account and
Council-
pick out people that really need the money? Or would that be
after
fine?
the fact,
Problem is I'm buying votes if I do.
yeah, it would have to be, we're gonna need rules for it. We're not gonna just let the two of you pick it out. That's not gonna work, okay?
Well, I
You
guess
wanna,
I can't
there's
give
nothing
you that.
stopping either one of you from walking around town and handing out money at the people that you think's poor. Go ahead.
Isn't that dang
Don't
good?
worry, you're gonna be popular.
You can stop at my house.
There you go.
Yeah.
But doesn't that still get me in the, whatever that,
I'm trying to see what, you wanna put money in and then you wanna choose who gets it? Is that what you're
damn
telling me?
right I would.
No, sir.
Well, that's not gonna have my recommendation. This council can choose, it'd be different. That
I
was the
don't mind
problem
if
with
the
giving
council
Mr. Hughes
chooses.
money. you
As long as
understand?
it goes to everybody, Mr. Lupo can buy the city. You Take it like my poster. Okay,
Well, I think when you set the budget, we should chat about the rules for that. You
Yeah.
understand? And well, I think we can make that
Can we
happen.
just allocate it for the lower portion of the grant money? that
You
goes
certainly
to
can,
that?
sir.
Yes,
There you
yes.
go. So this way,
Yeah.
Dale, your concerns will be
Right.
addressed. It'll go to the most needy on the
Right.
list.
that's what we need. That's what we want. Okay.
I'll take responsibility for that.
And I would like to request from Mr. Lupo that Mr. Muse and I and you have a meeting with code enforcement and just sort of have a mellow talk about, you don't jam it, you make it love it, or make it nice. I'm waiting for the answer.
It's code
Well,
compliance.
really, sir, the meeting is unnecessary. That is exactly what will occur. You certainly are welcome to talk to whomever you like, but
Well, I can't talk without you or I'll be meddling, so let's set a
that's
meeting.
part of the problem. You just have to simply understand that my instructions and Mr. Muse's instructions to our code enforcement people are to administer the code compliance rules that you have passed, like our police officers do, with an attention to the laws that they have to follow, but having a certain degree of latitude, and that's what you're referring to, sir.
No. I want to know the process and the procedure, because I get to catch all the phone calls. You get to hide behind Jocelyn. So I don't think we can't take call meeting.
Yes, sir, I'll call you.
Anyone else on council? Okay. I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda? Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion of residential maintenance standards. Council first.
Well, I have a quick question regarding that because we do have new input now from the residents. Will we have a time to put some of those things into the system or change or whatever needs to we decide to do? How do we start this process again, incorporating some of the concerns of the residents?
Yes.
From a legal perspective, the second reading was voted down next time, so you're at square one again.
So we're back at basically doing the draft again.
Well, you don't have to do a draft. Drafts aren't mandatory. I would presume if you know you're gonna change a lot of it or something, there'd be no reason
don't-
for a
I don't-
draft. So
I don't
now it's
think
just the
there is.
question is, what do you wanna do? You can
Okay.
do that whenever you
So
want.
do
You
we have
can
to
do
have,
that
in other
now.
words, do we have to set that as an agenda item to
It is an
discuss those
agenda.
changes?
Well,
So today, without even.
Well, it's an agenda item now. If you wanna bring it back for first reading at the next meeting, that's up to you. It's up to council. Yeah. Does that make any sense? Obviously, it's not gonna be a first reading today.
Right.
That's for sure.
Okay, yeah, I would just move to bring it back for first reading and move from that direction.
Okay, during the week, if anyone finds something that the citizens have suggested, they can contact Jim and, well, I guess you can't do that.
Was that a motion?
Yes.
That's a motion.
We need a second.
Would that be in the original intent, the original verbiage? Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Discussion, please.
I think there are a few viable items that people are concerned about. Obviously, we have the discussion about the Fourth Amendment over and over again, I understand it, but with a little bit of verbiage added to it, it makes people feel more comfortable about it. I don't see why we can't put something like that into it. Also, there's some discussion about rental, residential and non-residential. I know Mr. Lupo said we'll address a lot of that when it comes to commercial and industrial, so we'll deal with that later. But if there's any items, I mean, I think we need to make a few stipulations. I don't think that's a big one. The people are worried about us coming into their home. You had some good verbiage on that earlier, which I think could be added before we move
Jim will
forward.
have to change it, but I'll give it to.
Well, no, you quoted some
Well,
verbiage earlier.
nothing in this, what did I put? Nothing in this code should be construed to negate the Fourth Amendment or the rights to no search and seizure. Illegal
Jim, you
search.
understand the gist that we're trying to put on there?
Oh, I understand.
Make a request that we add some verbiage to make some of these people feel more comfortable.
I understand, just from a legal perspective, that no one, the proposed minimum residential housing standards does not in any way legally create any further threat to the Fourth Amendment, and it's against the law for any code enforcement officer.
I realize that.
I guess my point is that I could never recommend putting something in a code that's superfluous, that has no meaning. There's a
Okay.
million other things against the law. They're
Right.
not in this code. Does that make sense? I don't know how they could be used against us if there's some case went all the way up. Do you understand me? But can I put it in the code? Put anything in the code you want.
Cannot murder.
Yeah, right, those kind, you're right. I can put anything in the code you want, but,
Okay.
you know, where that's gonna lead
The
you,
question is-
it's not gonna have my recommendation.
Right,
Okay,
right.
just to be,
Well, that's
to
what I'm
make
asking.
people feel
I'm
comfortable.
asking.
Yeah, it doesn't have my,
Okay.
I can tell you why, and I didn't go over the wrong thing.
Jim and I had a long talk.
I had some people express concern about abuse of power by the building committee, which I hadn't even thought about, but do we have an appeals process or something that if they felt that they were being wrongly coded or violated or, you know,
Yes, we do.
do we have an appeals process that we can put, that these
Yes, we-
people know?
All the way through court system, yes, ma'am.
So it would be individual, it would be separate from the city, it'd be through the court system?
No, first the city and then through the courts.
Then to,
It's the city.
No,
First.
okay.
First us.
If a code citation is issued,
It's issued.
it's going before the court. There's no appeal of that in the city system.
No, there's no direct appeal to the city. It goes through the court system. Long before a citation is issued, that code compliance officer will meet with the building department, and they'll make sure that it will be or will not be issued. If it is issued, it'll be issued in accordance with law and adjudicated through the court system.
So
And that is why I want to be in that meeting.
it's just important that everybody knows that they have an alternative, that it's just not,
Right.
you know,
Can I
something like
address
that.
that further,
Sure.
Councilwoman? We have in our rules already, there's also that warning notices go out. I don't know if it's mandatory 14 days or whatever, but warning notices go out. As a practical matter, the code enforcement officer, Mr. Muse, you can correct me, if I knocks on the door and says, look, you got a problem here, I'd like you to fix it. Then he gives them the warning notice, okay? Mr. Muse is shaking his leg, shaking his head. And then a citation is issued. Like, it's a ticket, okay? It goes before, you can fight that ticket, or, if you fight the ticket, it'd be about a 20-minute hearing, 15 minutes in front of a county judge, okay? It's not like you need a lawyer or something like this. Now, to look at pictures and hear what the code enforcement officer has to say whether he considers that too much mildew or too much junk, okay?
Right.
That's how it works, okay? So,
Okay.
they're done rather rapidly. It's kind of like a speeding
Traffic.
ticket. you
It's
know,
like a traffic
ticket.
Traffic ticket.
traffic
I mean, so that's the process. I mean, nobody
Okay.
goes to jail.
It's just important that everybody
No,
knows
I
that they
appreciate
have,
that, yeah.
that they do have some
Yeah,
kind
they
of
have a right to argue
recourse,
about what's
and you can
best
go
for
do
us.
something
Well,
about it.
So,
Well done, and I have one more question for Mr. Bloom then. Would you consider, since there seems to be such, the only problems that we seem to be getting feedback on is the interior portion of this. Is there a way you think we can move forward with this on the outside of the home only?
I don't think so, Will, be truthful, I think it's important for a number of reasons. Basically for the safety, health, and welfare of the residents. I was speaking with Councilwoman Sorrell about a home that is not in compliance, catches on fire, for instance, and there's no smoke alarm or smoke detector, and within a short period of time, the next home is burning down, and then the next home is burning down. But I think it's kind of really a moot point in the respect that you're supposed to have smoke detectors, for instance, and you're supposed to have proper plumbing and heating and so forth. It's supposed to be a habitable residence. They can't check on it. You know, they just can't. They're not allowed. They can't come in. They can't check. You got a smoke detector in every room. They can't do that. So, but I think as far as the health, safety, and welfare of residents in this city, I think it's important. And then it becomes more important with tenants who have very little recourse with, say, a landlord that won't do anything. There's no air conditioning in the middle of the summer, or the plumbing's blocked up. You know, we've heard all these examples. I think that would defeat a lot of the purpose of the minimal housing. I mean, all of us are agreeable. We want the exterior of the homes to look decent, so you know it's going to be best for the city and attract more revenue and less crime and so forth and so on. But I have an extremely difficult time in just overlooking the interiors of the house. I think it's important. I think a homeowner probably would not have any issue doing what needs to be done. We live in our homes. We're going to want to make sure that they are habitable, and in doing so they're going to meet the standards, the minimum housing standards. But this gives you know, these tenants some recourse that possibly they didn't have. I think it's important for them.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
yes, please.
The number of homes that we have in here in Port Richey, do we know what the percentage of them that are owner occupied and what the renters are? Because this is really going to protect more renters than it is owner occupied, to have the interior in there. And I agree with Dr. Bloom that the interior needs to stay. But do we have a significant percentage of renters in this city?
The vast majority of property are owner-occupied properties, the vast majority of them. We don't have a level of renters that Newport Richey has, and they have developed a whole special process with respect to rental properties. We have rental properties, but they are of a different category, and by far residential properties are far in excess of any amount of rental property.
Owner occupied versus renter?
Yes, ma'am, owner-occupied.
So if this interior addresses basically what Mr. Bloom's saying is renters, to cover renters and to, again, with the landlord. So if we move forward with this, can we not also then have the verbiage that says in it that these interior specifications are for renters?
Can I address that?
Because that seems to be the biggest concern of people, so.
I understand. no one can go knock your door down. You can't knock tenants' doors down, you can't knock owner-occupied doors down. Okay. Let's say smoke detectors, make it easy, all right? The city can't come and walk through your door unannounced and check for your smoke detectors. This is an owner-occupied house. Now, the owner-occupied house could pick up the phone and say, hey, could you come over and cite me? I just noticed I didn't have smoke detectors. That's never going to happen, but they could. You might want to just put it up as opposed to getting cited, but theoretically it's true. Usually, the interior issues are properties that are rented because the person that's going to give consent for the entry is going to be the tenant. Okay, and you'll see faucets and sinks in here and what Dr.
Right.
Bloom was talking about. I don't want to be for this or against this, but they're going to call up and give consent to come in for those items. Okay, so now your decision is, do you want to do that or not?
Right. So
Okay,
the
so
homeowners
it's not a
obviously-
Fourth Amendment issue,
No.
it's not getting in their issue, but do you want to allow tenants who will give access for interior things, which will be the landlord's responsibility? Even if they were contracted out in the lease, it would still be the landlord's responsibility, and Dr. Bloom's given his position on that, but that's the issue.
Right, so
I'm just trying to crystallize the issue for you.
well, my basic question was, can it say that these interior standards, because a homeowner is not gonna call on himself,
Correct?
that these apply to renters? That these interior
You
standards.
mean you hold the renter liable?
No, you still hold the owner, but these people, there's concerns for some reason.
And then I'm missing, give me a scenario.
Smoke detectors,
Go ahead.
okay? That homeowners, resident occupied homeowners don't have to worry about it because, like you said, they're not gonna call
Right.
on themselves. A renter wants to call because he wants smoke detectors in his home
For safety, right?
for safety reasons. So can the ordinance say that these interior inspections or call for inspections apply to renters? Not that they have the, probably not making myself clear.
No, you see, that's the problem. In other words.
It's universal.
It's
look,
universal, I
it's uni-
understand that.
no, I
It
guess.
doesn't alleviate the angst that some of these people seem to
Yeah,
have.
I understand. So in
Yeah.
other words, you either are going to allow tenants to tattletale on their landlords or not. Do you understand me? That's the only issue.
Right,
Okay, if you don't want to allow that, you might as well blow off all the interior things that are in here.
right.
That's your choice. Do you understand me? It's not a matter of making it so tenants can't call landlords. You understand?
I'm not
Because
saying
they
that.
always have a right to consent to let anybody in. So the issue is, do you want the interior things or not? Do you
Right.
see what I'm saying? That's the only
So
way.
there's no specifying for one or the other, rental
Well,
or
there's
not
really-
rental. There's no, okay,
Do you see what I'm saying? You either have the interior stuff or you don't. Right.
okay.
Mr. Mayor,
And the
go ahead.
renters have to go to the landlords first.
No,
No, they
sir.
don't.
No,
That's
sir.
not the way I read it.
No, sir.
Go ahead. Well, I'm reading it.
Okay, so what are we looking at here for interior? If you go through this document, sanitary facilities
Yeah.
required,
Right,
hot and cold water supply, smoke detector system, sanitation, mechanical appliance in good working order. I mean,
I agree
Yeah.
with you 100%.
I mean,
It
most
just seems, there
people-
seems some anxiety over this for some unknown
you know,
reason.
I want to live next to a neighbor who has sanitation. I want to live next to a neighbor who has some mechanical devices that are in proper work. I don't want to be sleeping and wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning with an explosion next to me. It's minimal.
It is.
And it's common sense and logic that it's in the best interest, and the key here is the safety and the health and welfare of the neighbors, your neighbor and the neighbor next to you or behind you or in front of you. And they're minimal standards that 99.99% of people are going to have who are owner occupied. And I would like to think that tenants are going to see that there's proper sanitation and extermination and hot and cold running water and so forth and so on. So it's almost like you know, it's almost like they can't knock on your door, kick your door down and come in. Okay, so forget it, we know that. So if you have one smoke detector or four, it's not gonna be an issue. And so it's almost like, well, this is gonna be done anyway. So why would we have to deal with it? Those things are sanitation, for instance, and mechanical devices that are in operating in safe order, and, you know, and the smoke detectors and the such. It's kind of a moot point when you really think about it. It's there. It's going to be there in all these residential homes. Why take them out? Because if you do, then they don't have to fix their stove if there's a gas leak, and the place blows up, and they find out we had a gas leak. Well, I didn't have any. There was no standard there. I'm not responsible to fix that. It's not in the minimum housing standards. I complied. They weren't there. I wouldn't want to take that chance.
Wait, let me just ask a question. I was doing other things. So the way it goes is a renter has a problem, he goes straight to code enforcement, not to his landlord?
He can do
He has a
either one.
choice.
He has a
Landlord.
choice.
He has a choice?
Yeah. We're
If
not
he
gonna,
can't get
we're
action
not
from
gonna
the landlord,
legislate.
then he can go.
I would think that it
That.
should be landlord first, or you're
Sure.
gonna have 100,000 complaints.
Yeah. Right.
I think that's
think-
common
I'm
sense.
waiting for Jim.
Well,
Nope.
I guess, I've lived in cities with minimum housing codes, okay? Yes, a landlord's going to, a tenant's gonna call the landlord first if their sink's not working, yes. The issues become retaliation, the issues become tenants that are out fighting with their landlords. You understand what I mean? And the landlord's a slumlord, and they call them up and they said, oh yeah, well, I'm calling the city, you got all kinds of junk right here. That's the main issue in the minimum housing code, okay? Major cities don't allow you to evict under their local laws. We can't do that here in Florida. While there's minimum housing code citations outstanding, it's a game. You understand me? That's the main issue of minimum housing codes, is the retaliation between a tenant to a landlord, okay? So, on the one side, like Dr. Bloom's saying, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's the only way to get it done. Most landlords are gonna do these things to rent their apartments for safety reasons. Other reasons, it could be retaliatory. Look, I'm kicking you out, you haven't paid the rent. Oh, yeah? Well, you know, you don't have any smoke detectors. They were there last month. Well, they ain't there now, right? You got it? That's what this is about. That's always the issue. You understand what I mean? So, not that there's any good answers, and you can either take out the interior things or not. That's
Okay,
just,
that's-
that's
that
a
answers the
decision for
question.
this council. You could definitely take
Yeah.
out the interior things. You can do that, whether you want to or not, it's a different issue.
Yeah.
Okay, does that answer it?
Yeah.
I would think that if you took out the interior, you would also lose the privilege of dealing with owner-occupied house that was a hoarder situation. And anybody who's ever watched one of those shows on TV on hoarders, yeah, minimum sanitation and hot and cold water is a big issue on some of those. And at least this would give us an opportunity to do something about that house that might be really next door to you. If we took it out, we wouldn't have that.
Correct.
Okay. More thoughts before we go to the?
Not to say this would happen, but, you know, sometimes children don't get to live in the best conditions because their parents don't provide that for them. And that would be a travesty if there were no interior minimum housing conditions and there were children in that house. That would be horrible.
Should we take it in the
I think
public?
we have a motion already, right?
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
We're here, we gotta go there.
Yeah.
Everybody ready? All right, to the public.
Claudia Smith, 7335 Candlelight Court. May I remind everyone that you, one of the few times, had a full audience that had concerns, and we had a workshop. You cannot take what you have before you and now go ahead and pass it after talking and hearing all these people. You've got to do something to make it right. You heard the concerns. give it to Jim and let Jim do his magic to put a few things in there that will appease everyone, where at the first reading, we can go, okay, you're wasting time right now. You're all badgering it back and forth, but you listened to the people, didn't you? Did you take notes? I hope you did. Come on, let's get this done, but let's get it done right. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Sandra Spalding, 8612 Green Street. You know, the whole council always wonders why we never have people at a meeting. Okay? Well, you had a meeting, you had a workshop, you had people, they expressed themselves. You have people at a meeting today. Why not have a group of people work on this, bring it back to council, giving the people what they want? Why not do that? You've heard all the concerns, you've asked for this, you got it, and now it's like, poof, it's okay, we're gonna go right ahead and do the same thing. I'll leave you with that.
Bill Colombo, 7810 Cheska Street. Yep, we just had a workshop, and what the motion you have on the table is to just go ahead and pass what you had before. It's almost as like we had a workshop just to say we had a workshop. Your statements, I thought, or your question was right on track. I see no reason why you just don't pull the interior standards out. My head is spinning listening to you. On one hand, you're saying there's no way for anybody to go into somebody's house. On the other hand, you're saying, well, you don't want a house with a gas leak, or you don't want a house with sanitary issues. You're saying it in two different directions. It just doesn't make sense. You know, a great suggestion right there. I think a very easy thing to do, pull the interior references out of this ordinance and just go ahead and move forward from there. But again, you've got to vote out the ordinance you have on the table, and the ordinance you have, or the motion you have right now, is to pass it as is. So that means you guys got to vote against that, vote that out, and then bring up another motion. Thank you.
Anyone else? Matt?
8301 Congress, Matthew Todd. Mr. Colombo is nothing more than a witch hunt on his political career that he could not get 100 votes, and all this is a witch hunt.
No personal reference.
The whole thing is drive past his house. You can't tell where the yard and the wall starts at the front of the house with the weeds growing. It's a fact. It's a fact. Bottom line is I'm tired of him coming up insulting the two attorneys sitting up here and insulting the council sitting up here. That person couldn't even get 100, barely 100 votes. The thing is, we need to make our property values go up in value. The bottom line is, some individuals can't even manage their own life or their own finances. Thank you.
Anyone else? Pat?
Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. I have a question on exteriors. If you have a tenant who will not clean up their mess, no matter what you as an owner try to do, is the city going to penalize the owner? Because short of evicting the tenant, they don't have anything else they can do when they keep trying to get them. Now, this isn't me, but other people have brought this up. So
that's a very good question.
is there any way, if the tenant refused to comply and it's their mess, what kind of teeth do we have to put in that?
It's the owner's responsibility.
Tough call. It's the owner's responsibility.
It's the owner's responsibility.
I suppose the owner would have to try to get the tenant. If he didn't do it, you would have to do it and evict him if that were...
Correct.
Spend thousands of dollars, yep.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
Okay. And on this interior inspection thing, I'm at a point where if a tenant feels like there's something seriously wrong with the house, they should call the building department anyway, whether it's an ordinance or not. It should be a moot point.
Then if it's not an ordinance, the tenant has no rights.
but if they feel they're living in an unsafe situation, they can't call and ask for help?
Not if there's not an ordinance that gives us teeth to help them. So I think you're being prejudicial against tenants if you don't have the interior. Nope. Anyway, any more?
That's the issue.
Ms. Todd?
Kathy Todd, 8301 Congress. I just want to say that we did have a workshop, and I think it was awesome. We got a lot of opinions, and the fact that you vote for it, it's great. I mean, you got, like you said, you're going to take all these points and put them into the facts when it gets voted in, or however you vote. But it wasn't like you didn't listen and you didn't hear us. You did. You made notes. You sat up here and all discussed it. So to be said that you weren't listening or didn't hear us is just completely stupid. We know you did, and we know that when you do make your votes, that all the points that were made, you've included them, or you're announcing that you're going to include them. So I don't see where the hang-up or the hold-up should be. And like Mr. Matthews said, we do have landlords here, and we have slumlords here. And the whole point is, if you're a slumlord, then you need to get your act together. That's not what we want here, or not what we need. Landlords are fine. This helps those slumlords get their crap together. That's all. It helps. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from the public?
Mr. Mayor, if there's no other comments from the public, I would just like to make a final comment, if I might.
Okay, make the next to final. Go ahead.
Okay.
Or would
So-
you like me to go first and you make one?
You go first. I want to.
The only two things with all of this workshop that I heard was the reaffirmation that Jim thinks is superfluous, and I do too, that you can't illegally enter the home. And one thing that I'm a little concerned about is when you don't take anonymous calls, and this may not have to do with this, but if the building department can take anonymous calls, maybe take them anonymous and put the person down. If you don't take them anonymously, they won't be, like, if you live next to me, you don't want to make a call even if I have a horrible problem in my yard. So is it not allowable for us to allow the citizens to make an anonymous call?
Mayor, I've actually read that a few weeks ago, and I don't remember the answer. It's in our code concerning about who could make.
May I comment?
Yes, sir.
I must correct myself. We certainly can take anonymous calls. I'm mistaken.
Okay.
I apologize.
Those were the only two things I had from the group, other than the young lady that rewrote it all. And I think it's fine to go forward. You want to make a comment?
Jenny, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did listen to everybody that had something to say up here, and I did take notes on everything. And I'm seeing that you guys want to add more to it than already is there, and you want to change minor little words, which I don't know whether that'll change the impact of the whole thing or not, but it seems to me that most of the people that were up here, and I have everybody's name up here, we're looking for like an occupancy permit of some kind that could be included in this. They wanted a division between the residential and the commercial sort of issues, and tarping for weeks on end, and what is the percentage of pressure washing that needs to be done. I mean, I don't know whether we can legislate that minutely and be effective. I think we need this minimum housing, and I don't think it's going to affect people the way that they think it might affect them. I think it's going to do nothing but bring up the values of our houses around here. It's going to aid the renters that we have. It's going to, you know, make our neighborhoods look better. But most of the things that I have on that everybody said on here is just, you know, like what's an attractive nuisance mean, and they just want a fair and level playing field. I think this is just the groundwork for a level playing field. I think that the intent of the city is to try and help the people that need to be helped. We are working on trying to get grants for those that that have restrictions. We're trying to do the best thing for everybody that is here, and this general wording of this minimum housing standards is just a basics. It's a basics for everybody, and we're just trying to get a place where we can go forward and we can do something about those neighbors that are not helping out, that are not taking care of their stuff, or the landlords that are doing it, and protect those tenants and those children that might be in there. Or, you know, keep a rat-infested house from coming over into your house, and that sort of thing. So I think it's just a matter of words that we're really kind of stewing about, and I think that people will find out that it's not going to have that kind of impact on them that they are thinking. We need it. We've got to have it. Our values haven't gone up in this area for a while, and we're starting to move forward as a city. We're doing dredging, we're cleaning up the parks, we're doing all these things that are trying to help increase our value, and just the homes are going to be one of them. But if somebody wants to have a purple house and an orange driveway or something like that, they can still do that. No matter how badly you hate looking at the orange house or the purple driveway, but at least they won't have trash and rats and sanitation problems, or even be a fire hazard for your house. Because I've seen what happens when a fire starts in a house. Your vinyl siding melts too, you know. So I don't have any objection to any of this, and we are listening to the people. That's why we did the workshop, was to get everybody in here to hear what they had to say and to reassure them that we were not going to come into their homes and that we weren't going to start making them comply with HOA standards. So my notes didn't give me anything outside of that, and I tried really hard to cover everything. So that's just my opinion.
Well said.
I have to echo Councilwoman Sorrell's opinion. I did too take notes, and I had found that pretty much of everything that she just laid out, take out the entire interior portion of the code, which we discussed. The right to privacy, that seemed to be an issue for these folks. There were additions, 3 additions to that came out of the public. Make it residential, non-residential, commercial, and industrial. Adding a rental fee to subsidize salaries. I heard use what we have already in existence instead of Pasco County's minimum housing standards. I heard develop an ad hoc committee to address this issue. I heard, let's see, I don't want to live in an HOA. These are the comments that came from the public. Ordinance will breed ill will amongst neighbors.
But we have corrected that.
Yeah, okay, but this is another comment, okay? It's not, so that in effect states that we don't want ordinances because it's gonna breed ill will. Okay, so,
remember, that was if there were not anonymous, which we've corrected. There are anonymous, so that the ill will goes away.
Okay, and I heard our ordinances that we have aren't enforced already. I didn't want to live in a deed restricted city. We have, our community was blighted so we could collect the CRA funds. So let's keep it blighted so we can collect CRA funds. What else? There are a few more. The bottom line is with all this is, given all pretty much those basic comments that were made tonight, how are you going to revise this or rewrite this or delete or add to this that really is going to change the complexion of what was devised? And like somebody said earlier, in Pasco County minimum housing standards, these have been written by judges legislatures, attorneys, people who know what the building folks, people who know what needs to be done and are professionals that were doing it. And we did listen to the public, and we didn't hear a whole lot that would change what needs to be in place for the health, safety, and welfare and the betterment of the community and the residents and our property values. Thank you. I'm done.
Mayor?
Everybody can speak once. Nobody has a right to speak more than once.
Are you done?
Yes, I am.
I would like to call the question. Did you want to?
Just to cap this off, there was anxiety, and I understand it. However, my anxiety lays with the people of the city trying to write an ordinance with no legal training. That puts us as a city in a very, very dangerous position. It opens us to lawsuits, and as Councilman Bloom said, you know, these things were set up by people that knew how to write an ordinance. As Jim has said, they have been tried and tested in the courts of law. There are minimal housing standards. This is minimal as it gets. And I don't make these statements lightly, because I have taken the time to get a hold of the people in Newport Richie. I've taken the time to have long talks with code enforcement at the county and ask them where these problems would come up and how they play out. And to be honest, they just aren't there. If somebody doesn't like their neighbor and they want to call in, they're going to do it. They're going to do it whether they have housing standards or not. They're going to. This poor man that answers the phone over there goes through this 8 hours a day. Some of the things are founded, some aren't. But what bothers me is the people that would have a problem with putting a fire alarm in. I would sleep a lot better if I know if they thought I was being overbearing because I'm asking them through an ordinance to put a fire alarm in their house. If somebody gets burned up, if some child gets burned up, I'm going to sleep a lot better knowing that I asked them through a law in this city to comply with that minimal housing standard. I don't know what else to say. This is so basic, it's so minimal. And everybody's got this on their books. We're very late to the table, folks. We should have done this years ago. I don't know why we didn't. Maybe we were just too busy doing other things. But as the city's moving forward, and I believe this council is making every effort to move it forward, I think this is one of those things we are going to have to just do and do for the good of the people, and know that we are doing that for the good of the people. You know, we've even offered free alarms. So there's no argument here on fire alarms.
They go on.
There's nobody going, they'll come in, oh God, I better not say this. They'll come into your house and put them up for you. But you have to invite them. They're not going to beat down your door and put it up.
Free. They're free.
And they're free. I understand where people get nervous about this kind of thing, but this is tried and true and done and it's been in place for years, and I don't see the problem. I really don't see the problem. I understand the concern, but like I say, this has been written by legal people. It's been tried in the courts. Let's just go ahead and do it. I hate HOAs myself, and I would not live in a place that resembled anything of an HOA, by the way.
All right. Any more thoughts? I would like to have a question called.
I can't hear you.
Let's have the question called. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Thank God.
Down to business.
We tried, folks. Okay, we are at the FCT Agreement 3.
Yes.
Now, this is gonna be an interesting one.
Yeah, you know, it's late.
And
I'll make it brief. So, what this agreement is, I didn't know, obviously. Being new, you guys probably know what it is. I've been to a number of events over in Newport Richey, in Sims Park, and I was just inquiring about our park, our waterfront park, to see if we could maybe have some events like they do in Sims Park. And I found out that, well, there are restrictions according to this agreement, and there are some pretty significant restrictions. However, the reason I'm bringing this up is and there's more work to be done, but first I want to get the flavor of the council to see if this would be something everybody up here would be interested in, and if so, then I would pursue this a little bit further in looking maybe on ways to potentially get around these restrictions or deal with the FCT. And then I had contacted the parks people at Newport Richey, who said they would have a meeting with me, and I would take Jocelyn with me. But first, all I wanted to do initially is to see how the council folks felt that would this be something they would be interested in, and do they think the city would benefit by it?
I would love to have things like car
Sure.
shows, and
Yes.
I think it would be great for the city. But this has always held us back. And
How about-
Terry can tell us.
How about gun shows, Will? I couldn't hold myself back, I'm sorry.
We can, okay, but since you brought it up, page 3, this agreement may be amended at any time. Now, maybe we should think about amending, because if I understand this right, Jim, and my shingle's going up, single after the competition. If any essential term, if anything is violated, blah, blah. Anyway, if we don't do what they say, which maybe we're overstepping, then they can give it to somebody else that's willing to maintain it and get nothing back from it. Is that correct? Or
They can just take it back.
they can take it back. Who are they gonna give it to?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Just give it a little more.
Which gains impetus to the part that I'm talking about, which says it can be amended at any time.
Everything between two parties can be amended every time. Your problem is the other side's
Except the
not
Fourth
going.
Amendment.
Right, the other side's not. Yes.
But
Look, the Florida Communities Trust is a statutory animal, about 300 or 400 pages on it. They acquire, preserve, and maintain. They're a legislative executive agency, okay? I can tell you the code section. Okay, they have websites, they have staff, okay? We have a contact person. We want to know if we can do something. They come out and they audit us. They come out, I think, every 2 years. If Jocelyn was here, she could tell you when. They give us a formal report.
Right.
Okay? They actually, certain things we're supposed to do, okay? Part of it, like.
Annual report.
Occasionally we give them an annual report. They'll call us up and we're supposed to certain things for disabled children in the park. We're mandatorily supposed to do, we don't do. They let us slide on a lot of that stuff. Whenever we want to do something, we have our contact person. They tell us yes or no. We don't like it, we can sue them in the administrative courts and all this stuff. If we do something, and the other flip side is if we do something they don't want us to do, they could bring an action to have the property put in the name of the Florida Communities Trust. That's where it goes.
Then what happens?
Then they own it
And they take care of it.
No, sir.
No, they'll probably put a fence through
Passive.
the front of a passive park. They might not even let anybody into it. It's property they manage, acquire. It depends on how
Correct.
many other passive things they have in the area. They might just want to they could do anything they want with it. They might not want people in that park.
Turn it
They
to a
don't
bird
operate- They don't have to
sanctuary.
operate a park. It's their property. They own millions of acres.
Okay.
Sometimes they do this with hundreds of acres.
Then within our city, they could just let it grow up into,
They may want it, yes. Yes, they may want to do all kinds of things if they own it, but most likely, generally, they're preserving property. That's what they do. They're in the business of it. That's right, they may let hunting on it. The answer is, we do have contact people, you understand what I mean? And they're very touchy, like sometimes about whether you have a vendor, they make certain rules, how much money they want. Definitely won't have like an outside vendor there and things like this. We've spoke with them about it a lot, but like you said, if council wants to push the envelope, you can give them scenarios and they'll answer the question for you all the time.
Yeah, so the intent tonight was just to run it by council, see if everybody was interested in it, and then they maybe take the second step, and I would sit down with Jim and we'll go over this document. It's a pretty lopsided, it's pretty one-sided, there's no question about it, but you know, there may be ways to work with him, or there may not be, but just purely for the interest purpose was the reason for bringing it.
if you take all of the money we spend upkeeping the park, trimming the mangroves, which looks much better, keeping the children's things, I would like you two attorneys to look at the amending it, not to make it a active park, not to make it any different, but just to make it where we can have these events and make enough money to maybe half of the upkeep of the park.
If I might, speaking from the administrative implementation, and I certainly would welcome any investigation into possibly expanding the utilization of that park. But I must remind everyone that a lot of the maintenance of that park and a lot of the items in that park are provided by grants, specifically because of how that park is run.
Right.
But I certainly would appreciate any, I mean, more than willing to share our contacts with the FCT so that we can investigate that possibility. But I assure you that if the administration attempts to do something at that park that someone may not like, they will make a phone call immediately to the FCT to make sure that the FCT is aware of what our efforts would be, and to ensure that the FCT notifies us of what we can and cannot do. So intervention prior to that, I certainly welcome any assistance that we could get.
I think the events, how many people, does anyone know approximately how many people were at Waterfront Park for July, for the fireworks?
30.
Bob, huh? 30?
Huh?
30?
Oh, no, we had a lot more than that. 200, I would say.
Several hundred.
But
at
if
least.
There were several hundred cars in the parking lot.
Right, alone.
Was there plenty of room?
There was plenty of room.
Okay.
There was room for probably at least another 200, I'd say, before we even started to get crowded.
And if we didn't have to park cars in there, there'd be room for,
Well, if you wanted to be close to the activities, probably not, but, you know, if you were doing something, say, in the shelter area,
okay.
you wouldn't want them over where the trees and the cars are parked now, but.
I mean, I'm thinking Woodstock here.
Oh.
Vince, did you have something?
Yeah, almost all of that is dictated. When we had this event, we contacted FCT and gave them layouts of where everything was going to go, where the portalettes were going to go, where the baby stations were, where the parking would be, and that was all in compliance. But what Dr. Bloom was talking about is examining what our contractual obligations are and what leeway we might be able to obtain from FCT for specific functions and what those functions may or may not be. If we can obtain that information, then we would probably come back to council, because there are other issues that would naturally grow. Do you want to have certain types of entertainment? What kind of entertainment? Who vests that entertainment? What you would like to have for consumption, beverages, alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic beverages. There's all those considerations. And with respect to that specifically, that's a city issue, not a limitation from the FCT. Those limitations revolve around who sells what, how much money comes in, and the reporting processes. But that's something that we can certainly work with. I'll be more than happy to share the contact. The city attorney and I and you can get together and we can go from there, sir.
Does anybody,
I would welcome that assistance.
Excuse me. Does anybody know how big the upland part of that park is? How? 2 acres, 1 acre, 8 acres? I can't find it.
Chris, I don't know. Do you know that's pretty difficult to determine for several reasons. You have a basin in one end, then you have a low-lying end on one section, then you have and some of those sections were specifically spelled out when we obtained the park itself. We spent thousands of dollars to put special grasses in there, special plants in there, and that they are to be maintained and renourished, and we do that. So the specific amounts that areas you're talking about is quite limited. The basin takes up a large section, and then beyond the basin, there's the walk round, and then there's the retention area on the side that is actually a non-utilization area, and then there's a small parking section and a blank section that used to be over by Miss Spalding's house. But I can't give you actual numbers because it varies around.
All right, I'll tell you next time.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out how many people could go if you had the Rolling Stone. So it's going to pack it up. How many people goes in?
That would be a determination made by both the building department and the fire department and the police department with respect to the number of occupancy that would be allowed at that facility.
Can you give me that number by tonight?
You get the stones.
Could you work on that, please? 'Cause I really think we could have some really lovely events there.
Sure.
And maybe we'll have to move the main station.
Anything and everything is possible as long as it's within the guidelines established by the proctors for FCT.
I know some time ago, when there was a lot of banter back and forth on what we were going to do and where we were going to put ramps in that. So there was a lot of discussion, and I had several discussions myself with FCT. And I think they're more accommodating than anything. They will never tell you no. I joked with the lady at one point, asked her if I wanted to launch her a huge rocket in that park, would she let me? And she goes, well, you'd have to submit it to us, and they'll never tell you no. They will never tell you no.
They won't tell you no till you spend
Not
$60,000.
at the beginning, anyway. They will always hear what you want to do. So I think they're very open-minded, and I think it's worthy of us to.
Let's put our attorney on it.
I think we should put our attorney on that. Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I'm going to graduate soon.
it sounds like there's a possibility that if we came up with an actual scenario like a car show and came up with what we wanted there in a plan and went to FCT with a functioning plan, it would be easier to work those details out with them.
Yes,
Than to
Counsel.
just go and say, are you guys going to be flexible?
We attempted almost a year ago with respect specifically to a car show. And we spoke to them, and they raised many different kinds of objections, even including where the cars might be displayed, what kind of cars are it, is there grease coming out, and all environmental issues that kind of pushed us out of that realm. And that's one of the reasons why I welcome the assistance to re-investigate these possibilities.
But we had, Eloise Taylor had the highwayman once. I thought she was listening, but she's not. Anyway, it was an art show, and it was nice. It was really nice. I don't know that we can make any money on that, but it'd be nice to bring people to the city. The highwaymen, are they still going? I thought you would know, because remember Eloise brought those.
Most of
that
most of
group,
those
and it was a
individuals.
great thing.
Most of those artists have passed away. There are only several of the original highwaymen still around. I've been fortunate enough to own a
Can I
couple.
make a comment, just
Sure.
on the issue from last year, Councilman? July 4th last year, we went back there, we wanted to have some vendors there, okay? And I've seen this before, because Dr. Martinez and I have gone through this. We charge for applications and vendor fees. All revenue generated by the city must be used exclusively for staffing, utilities, facility development, resource protection, and upkeep the FCT file. We have to answer to them, okay? A lot of paperwork for that. There's documentation of all third-party vendor revenue. So any vendor that's in there, we have to have them sign up and then tell us how much they sold, and then take penalties against them the next year if they don't sell it, and the list goes on. They say yes, but the regulations are through the roof. So when somebody comes in and, you know, a hot dog vendor, I want to have a list that's going to be on this kind of form, and we got to prepare the forms. I want to know how many hot dogs you sold, and how much money it was, and how much sales tax you collected. And if they don't give us that form, we got a problem, okay? And then we got to do something so we don't let them in next year, things like that.
Let's go
The
back.
regulations are just nuts. You can do a lot of
I
things.
understand, and you're the only one that's gonna know this. This agreement may be amended at any time. Maybe that's part of our amendment, but we don't have to do a 25 page.
I don't know where it says that, but all agreements can be amended at any time, Dale.
I'm
It's just
serious
getting
about
them
it.
to
They're
amend it.
laughing.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
It's not gonna
It
happen.
will happen if you push. Everything happens if you push. I'm sad
I
for
just say,
you.
it's,
I think you have.
we'll
a-
look into it. Doc will,
I think you have a consensus, sir.
easiest way to do it is
Okay.
some
So-
scenario, you present it to them, and then you kind of get a feel for where they're coming
All
from.
right.
It's those
Yeah.
kind of things.
See what we can do.
Yeah.
Richard,
We'll seek it out and see what we can do.
get rid of the paperwork. I
Yeah.
mean, we have to give them an annual report. We have, Jim saying, we gotta give them a book because we sold a hot dog.
Yeah.
That stuff can be amended. Okay, go ahead. We're done with that?
Yes.
I hope.
For
Yes.
first reading.
First reading.
Do you have a amendment, do I have a motion to not talk about it?
Okay, we're on number 4, Mayor.
First reading.
Dog ordinance.
Is the, first reading of ordinance number 18-662 by title only, and ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Richey, State of Florida, amending the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 20, Parks and Recreation, Article 1, in general, Section 20-1C, amending Article 3, Olsner Park, Section 20-63C, miscellaneous prohibitions, amending Article 4, Nix Park, Section 20-96C, miscellaneous prohibitions, and providing for severability, inclusion in code, and an effective date. I crossed off, you can see that on the first page, looking for a motion, but you'll see what's added. Pretty much I'm allowing dogs in the parks, unless it.
All
okay,
parks.
All parks, unless we say otherwise, right?
Make the motion to approve ordinance number 18-662 with the strikeouts and new additions.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? There should be none. We've been doing it for 20 years.
That's right. Must be on a leash and pick up after the dog.
Okay, would the public like to speak? Was that a yes? I figured.
I think the dogs should be allowed in the park as long as they are on leashes. I lived next to the park for 23 years, so I was there when the park started. And we had dogs running loose, and I had my animals going crazy because they came by the fence. They thought it was funny, and so did the owners. I love dogs, as you all know, but as long as they're on a leash, I think they should be able to go to the parks. Except for the dog park, then they're off the leash there, right?
Correct.
That's it.
Okay.
Agnes,
What else?
you forgot to put Agnes as a special
Agnes
case.
does not have to be on, Agnes doesn't have to be on a leash.
An exception in there.
She's the first lady. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
You want to table the item number 5?
I'm saying, I don't know how you guys are, but I am worn out. I would love to table 5.
I'll make a motion to table 5.
We have one left.
I've got, I've just got so many people called me about being on these things. Okay, so we have,
We're just discussing boards and committees left, right?
That's
Yes.
all that was left.
that was the one where,
Want to take 5 and come back, or you just want to knock this? I mean, there's not a whole lot to be done, as far as I can tell, on this at this point.
there's a few question marks that I don't have, and that is, some of these committees haven't met since 2008. Can we strike them, like Citizens Advisory Committee, Inactive Committee, Historic Commission, which you'd love to have, but Mrs. Mallett was the bones of that. And maybe Mrs., the young lady that said, anyway, and the Personnel Review Board, all that is, as I understand it, is they review your decision to fire somebody.
Could I answer a couple
Yes,
of
please,
things?
sir.
The only, I believe it was Councilman Sorrell wanted to put this on the agenda, right, for conversation or whatever, but Planning and Zoning Board and Board of Adjustment can't go anywhere. They have 5 and 7 member boards. They have to have that many people. Citizens Advisory Committee, and I know this is, it was an ad hoc committee.
Right.
You can have that or just get rid of it. It's been sitting out there. The Comprehensive Land Use Committee, we need, because it's part of our code, but we only do that every 10 years. Councilwoman had asked what's out there. Off the top of my head, the Personnel Review Board, that's a code committee. It hasn't been called to do anything in years. I remember it was called once about 10 years ago. Its purpose is if you have been fired or a penalty was given to an employee, there's a certain procedure that you go through, appeal process, and take it to there. It's kind of, doesn't get you anywhere because the city manager can overrule it, I think.
Correct.
Is what it comes down to. But that's a code committee, so in other words, we generally put that together when we need it. It hasn't been needed in 10 years, but you can't just get rid of it because it's in our code. You can't get rid of I believe there's something in our code about the historic committee, so you can't get rid of it. Doesn't mean you have to have anybody on it, doesn't mean you have to meet, but you can't get rid of it. Okay, ad hoc committees you can get rid of, okay, if that answers your question, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Express, they'd like to be on.
Yeah, these are the ones, 2 major ones here. So there were some comments about the Citizen Advisory Committee, that's what we
Is that
put
an ad
on
hoc?
there.
It's an ad hoc committee?
It's an ad hoc committee, but hasn't been around. You can see the resolution there, but you could
2008.
revive it, and, we just gave you the
revive it,
resolution.
or you can
You start another one, or you could revive this one, if you wanted to. Do that by resolution.
We've got 4 people who want to be
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
And you can see its purposes there and stuff. You can start another one with that resolution. Just revive it. It's an ad hoc committee. Yes, they look, council decides they want to revive it, I'll prepare another resolution. That's the old one, it's revived. That was
Sorry.
for members first.
Yeah.
I've got more members than I got committees, but they don't want to be on those. So,
I don't know if that answers any questions or helps.
can we table it, look at it, get all
Okay.
the people that want to be on it, and decide.
And then because of it's ad hoc, we can just go ahead and restart it like you said, people who want to be on it. can be
I
on it.
this is the way it was set up before. You can change things, it's just some structure for you.
Is there a mechanism where the public is aware that there are vacancies on some of these committees, that they get,
Yes,
they're notified somehow, the public is notified?
We've done that in several different ways.
Posted on the website? It is.
Yes, the memberships for all the committees are posted on the website, as well as if there are any vacancies. And there's a section was also put in the newsletter, which was sent out to all the residents, stating that we're looking for people who were interested.
Okay, so that
It's there.
they're informed.
Yes, sir.
Old business, yeah, I'm good on that. I just have a couple of things to bring up on the old business thing.
Have you tabled this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go to the next re-agenda.
Sure.
Wait.
Hold on.
What's the issue?
Before you table this, can I ask a question?
Yes. Have I denied you yet?
Not yet. Pat Rogers, 4838 Sunset Boulevard. As the chair of the Historical Committee, who hasn't been in existence forever, and you're right, Mrs. Mallett was the lifeblood. There are boxes of old photographs and documents in the back room somewhere.
Here?
In here, yes.
Okay.
Stuff that she brought in. And my question is that if we're gonna just let this kind of float, because she was the one with all the knowledge, can that be donated to West Pasco Historical Society?
We could do that, or we could have some people that were interested go through and see what kind of treasures
Because
there are.
most of the people would know that. I don't even know her around anymore, you know?
I'm sorry?
Most of the people that would have the knowledge of who these photos are aren't around anymore.
Once we go, I'm sorry, Mayor, once we go through all of that stuff that was given to us, we'll make a determination of exactly what some items we hang up on the walls.
Yeah, I
Once
know.
we do that, any other, if we're not gonna really take advantage of it, most certainly I'll bring it to council for them to allow it
Because, you know,
to
I
be
was
on
part of-
permanent loan to Pasco
Yeah,
County.
I was part of having the photos that are on the
Yes,
wall.
yes, ma'am. But first, we'd like to go through it and then make sure it's archivable, and then whether we'll be able to use some of it or keep some of it as our own history.
Some of it is explanatory with what's in the picture, but others is like,
Correct.
who knows?
The lady that was sitting right here at the workshop, does she live by you?
Bev Snell, or
What was her
is it
last name?
Candy Snell?
Snell, I believe that was, she was,
Yeah.
her family
Advisory.
went way
They
back.
moved here in the
ones that would,
60s.
You know, come to us and say.
I moved here in the
18 or
50s.
7 or 19?
19.
19, okay.
Yeah,
I just wondered.
I moved here in the 50s, so, you know.
But I would like to get in touch with any members of that committee, go through the information, sort it out, and then come back to council so council can make that decision.
The historic committee? Yeah.
That's him.
You're looking at it.
Yeah, well, yes, sir. One,
The only
Ms.
one left.
Rogers, and there was another individual I remember,
Caroline.
one who would like to have been appointed to it, so we put that together and definitely go through that committee.
Yeah, because it's a shame for all that to just sit there.
It will not get lost, man, assure you that.
I'm
Yeah.
I
don't know how that happened.
do that.
Can we get a
I
motion
just-
to adjourn?
We're about to, we have
Hold on,
one
hold on, we
more
got everything going on at
citizen.
the same time here.
Hold on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say very quickly, we used to, every October, essentially just contact everybody on committees if they still wanted to stay on them.
Right, yeah.
We would just, they didn't have to be here, we just nominate them and they would just all be reappointed to the committees. You know, like Citizens Advisory Committee or the Historical Committee, I don't see any reason for just letting them sit dormant, you know, I mean, it's really not hurting anything. You can disband the committees, you know, by ordinance, but why, you know, I mean, it may garner some interest in the future. That's entirely up to you, though, you know, I mean, I just, like I said, if it's an inactive committee and it's just sitting there, it's really not.
It's there for when we need them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, you know, I mean, so there may be interest in the future, Historical Committee or the Citizens Advisory Committee, and then it's, the framework is there, it's there, and boom, it's just up and running, and let it rock and roll.
I'm gonna bring it back.
Have we contacted all the people on these boards to see if they want to re-up, which is yes?
We can do that.
Would you
We have
do
not done that at this time.
That really should be done before we do anything.
Yeah, and that's the easiest
can
way
do
to
that.
do it, and you just go right through them, bing, 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 you know, people say, yes, I wanna be re-upped, or no, take me off, and other people, you know, say that they're interested, and you just do it, you know.
It'll be done.
With you.
You can knock through it real quick.
All right.
Old business?
No,
Just
but
have a couple
she's worn
short
out.
things,
All
themes.
those speeches you made, we gotta think.
You just have to listen to me for a few
I
more
always
minutes.
do.
Okay. The park and waterfront park, the children's equipment, is it in yet? Are we looking forward to it?
It's being shipped. Hasn't
Okay.
arrived yet.
So we.
One piece has arrived. Some of the picnic tables have arrived, which are already in place.
Awesome. So we have a lot more going that direction in there. The east side sidewalks the new sidewalks, have we started that, or where are we in our planning on the sidewalks?
It's out to the engineering company, and we're just now receiving the report, so we'll be meeting back with them, and then we'll come back to council once it's ready.
Okay, so we're just waiting on a report for that one?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
The median upkeep that we have agreed to do, is that going to take place soon?
Bill, median, we have to install it first, so that's a matter of.
The drawings have to be approved first by FDOT. That has not happened yet. It's in the process of being approved, but it has not happened.
Okay,
This
so
is
we.
going to probably be another year.
Oh.
This all occurs, yeah. A long time.
Water lines running out there.
They can get a truck
Are we
for that.
repairing that, or are we gonna do it in a truck?
There's no money in to repair it. The money in the grant was just for plants and planning.
It's part of the issue that we talked about with our UT.
That's what she just said.
I
Right.
just said the
Seventy
UTV.
gallons.
Right.
Okay. And you've already talked about the grant, which was on my list, so we know that's in the works and we're waiting for that finalized.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hiking bike
Motion
trail?
to adjourn.
Second.
On favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The
It's all right.
process.
I got it in there.